Okay, so we got a nice big box that came in from AFC Finishing Systems. A friend of mine is a programmer over there, and I'm using a putty knife in a very non-conventional fashion here. And this is going to be the control cabinet for my Z-axis auto feed on the 618 surface grinder. So inside we should see all kinds of stuff. I'm going to start with a drawing. Wow, he even gave me wire. Look at that. This is one of the nicest kits I've ever seen. Alright, so I got a drawing. In limit proximity switch, main power, stepper motor. There's my step motor driver. 24 VDC power supply, PLC. I think that's the what is that? That's the step motor power supply. That's the PLC power supply. There's the touch screen. It just gets a little bit of power, and then we've got a Ethernet cable that goes from the PLC to the touch screen. All right, it doesn't seem too hard. I think I can do that. So wire, awesome, and actually that things there is printed out in color, so just follow the colors. How hard can it be? So he sent me wire, awesome. Panel screws and hold downs, tie wraps and sticky bases. This is like a complete kit. They were pretty swamped up there. I didn't have time to put it together. I said, send me the stuff down. I'll put it together. A little bit of DIN rail with 3 relays. A rotary switch and a rotary backer. Those are Siemens. Oh mercy, look at those. A couple of resistors. What is this? Basic mono. This must be my touch screen. It's a monochromatic. Yeah, it's a very small touchscreen. Very small, but it's a membrane front. Doesn't have individual buttons, so if you do splash on it, no huge deal. And it's gasketed in, you know. It's got a clamp kit that sucks it back, and here's the mounting kit there. Alright, so that's got to go in the front of the panel. Out of here, more fluff. Oh, there's my contact block. That goes with the switch. Switches usually come in three elements. The operating head, the mounting block, and then the actual contact blocks. And you can stack more than one contact block. This is a greenie, so that's probably normally open. Yeah, 1 NO. So the green ones are usually normally open and the red ones are normally closed. So you can put whatever type of switch gear you want on there and kind of build your own switch. Oh, nameplates. Wow, look at them go. Off. On. Oh, let's get into this one here. Oh, that's the PLC. Siemens PLC. Inputs. Oh, that's just a power supply. In there, out there, nothing down there. Yep, that's just a power supply. Alright, easy enough. Let's see what this one is. Automation Direct, step motor driver. Okay. Ain't much to that. Made in China. Okay. I'm a very good driver. Okay. I got 3 more things in here. Oh, they give me a little bit of windy stuff, a little conduit to wind around my cables. I'll definitely use that. Oh wow, it's a DIN rail with a bunch of stuff already mounted on it, which is kind of nice. It's like a sub-assembly. So they already built that for me. The PLC runs on 24 volt and the stepper motor runs on 48 volt. And there's our 110 in. So we've got breakers for all that stuff. Pretty nice. And 2 more elements. One of them should be a PLC. I haven't found a PLC yet. I'm kind of guessing that's what this is. Yep. There's a Siemens PLC. And this one's got the inputs and the outputs. Outputs here, inputs here. So it takes signaling up here. It takes your outgoing relays and things like that. Whatever it needs to run is down here, but all the data it needs to collect is up here. Alright, so that's PLC. And then this should be, what, a power supply for the step motor. A Rhino. So 100 to 240 volts in and 48 out DC. So it's just a power supply. It actually fits on a DIN rail, so it'll snap on a DIN rail. Got a little spring-loaded catch. Made in Thailand. Okay, so I need to, and I've got a subplate, and there's a sub base down here in the bottom. So we need to get everything fitted, figure out where everything's going to go. Hopefully I can pack all this stuff in there. Shouldn't be any big deal. That fits pretty sweet already. Alright, so I need to do some arranging and figure out my basic mounting of all this stuff, and then we will go from there. Okay, well I did a little bit of pre-arranging, and the first thing you do when you start off building a panel is get all your holes cut. You know, you've got all this sensitive stuff in here. It doesn't like metal chips, so do your arrangement really quick. We've got our touch screen here, which is going in the cover, so I need to cut a hole in the cover. I'm going to make some conduit entries in the bottom for my conduits and devices that are going out, and I think the touch screen is going to live right up here in the cover, so there's tons of room behind there. And then we've got a rotary switch that needs to go in the cover. And I'll probably even pop a second hole in it in case I want to add another rotary switch and just put a plug in it and use it as a spare. It's better to, you know, have a hole and not need it than need it and not have it. And then you got to drill a hole in a panel that's got all a bunch of sensitive electronic equipment. I mean, we got power supplies, open tops, green boards, all kinds of electronics. One metal chip laying on the wrong green board can really cause havoc. So everything fits really good. We've got, these are all mounted on DIN rails. You know, so those DIN rails are going to get mounted on that sub base, and we're going to kind of space them out so we can get our fat sausage fingers in there. You know, keep this up high enough because all our connections are kind of coming in the bottom there, and mount this up about here. I think I'm probably going to take this relay bank and cut that DIN rail and relocate it kind of up here. What you need to think about is how you're going to get wire from here to here, to here, to here, to here, all these different places. You know, I'm thinking the step driver needs to be kind of down low. But you always need to think about how you're going to get wire from here to the outputs, and from here to the inputs, and to the relay banks, and back and forth. And, you know, how are you going to route your wires on everything? So you need to kind of think about that and leave yourself a clear place to do it. Leave enough room between your components. You know, if you want to run the Panduit little gutters in there with the snap covers, that's totally cool. I don't have that many wires. I'm just going to run looms. This is kind of a low budget thing anyway, so we're not going to go full high tech on it. There's not that much stuff in here. All right, but that's I think that's about my layout there. I like it. And I've still got kind of a cavity here, so I'm thinking be kind of right over there with my display. All right, and there's nothing special about cutting into a box. I use a jigsaw with a fine tooth blade. Put tape on the front of your panels. Drill your 4 corners of where your piece is going to drop in. Like I say, put blue masking tape down and just get in there and jigsaw it out for rectangular holes and things like that. There's really no good way to do it, you know. So that's what we're going to do here. I've seen big companies that you get in with plasma cutters and they just make a mess, and or they get in there with a cutoff wheel and try to do it, and that makes a mess of them too. So jigsaw and a file and some patience. And then as far as your switches go, these are the 22 millimeter. Yeah, these are the 22 millimeter size switch bodies, and which is roughly the equivalent of 7/8. So pretty easy to do, and the block that goes in the back, it gets sandwiched in, and it makes it a very secure connection. So pretty simple. I'll probably pop a couple of extra holes, so I'll have an extra 22 millimeter hole if I want to add a switch later. I think I'm going to hook this up to the coolant too, so I'll have coolant control here as well. All right, so let's get to it. Let me start cutting. I want to put all this electronic stuff away, plan all my cuts, and go to town. Okay, I thought I'd show you these switches from Siemens. This is the back. This is what goes back behind the cabinet door. This is what goes in the cabinet door. And this is a three position. And you can see it's got 2 little pads right down here, and it's in its center position right now. So pushing one for left and pushing the other for right. So depending on which switch gear you put back here, it could be an on, off, on switch, or an on, off, off switch. Anything you need for it's a maintained contact. It's not momentary contact. Momentary contact would be when you put it in this position and let go, it'll spring back to center. So that's the difference between maintained and momentary contact. And these just kind of slip in to these collars. They only go in one way. They're keyed, so they only go one way, and they just snap in. And I'm going to show you something else that's kind of neat on them. This screw right here runs actually a set of gears. I'm going to start tightening this, and I want you to see what comes popping out of there. I'll screw it way out. There's a gear here and here. When I turn that screw, get in there. When I turn that screw, that thing screws in and out to pinch down on the cabinet sheet metal. And then in the back, your contact assemblies simply snap on right here, and that enables you to configure the switch any way you want: on, off, on. However you want it to work. You can stack your switch gear on top of that rear block. So they're pretty modular. And if you want to take it apart, you have to flip this little fella here, and it comes back apart. All right. Thought I'd share. Okay, so we laid out our touch screen opening, scribed it, taped up to the scribe lines. I changed my mind at the last minute to give it I'm giving it a tad of wiggle room. I don't want it to be a press fit, so I did move my bottom scribe line over and my right side scribe line over. And then I put two switches right below, two switch holes. These are going to be 22 millimeter, the push button size, and they are staggered, so they're on center with the touch screen. All right, so we're going to get all the holes cut first. We're going to do the round ones first, and drill, and then come up here and drill us a couple spots where we can get in there with a jigsaw and get that rectangle cut out. All right, so let's get this. I don't even want this in the same zip code as where I'm cutting. So all electronics off the bench when you're doing your cutting. You're gonna have a lot of filings and metal shavings flying around. Let's get this thing cut. Okay, looks like we got a winner. Time to clean up. In case you were wondering, that's a little knockout set by Greenlee, and those are carbide cutters. They're just carbide tipped, and I got a pretty unique little pilot bit, kind of a step bit. It helps you stay on center. But nice little set. They certainly don't give them away. But I particularly like the shoulder to keep you from punching all the way through like you do with a conventional hole saw. And these cut very nice round holes. Okay, we're done with files and scribes and squares and cutting and all the nasty stuff. We're ready to get some components mounted. I'm going to get some of this stuff kind of pre-assembled here. These are the little pullback brackets for the touch screen. So we're just going to get screws started in there. Get everything prepped to go in the door. We'll get all the door stuff in first. These have a little pinpoint screw on the end of them. Let's get that out of there. A little pinpoint right there. That's what digs into the door and pulls back, pulls back on the display. And they give you us the spots for them here. What they do give you, let's see. They give us a little power supply block. That's what just kind of clicks in there. You connect your wires here, and it just plugs right in, but it's going to get in the way of the install. So let's put our display in. It just goes in an opening, and I'll put this one little on here. It just kind of hooks in these holes and tighten that screw, and that's what pulls it back into the gasket. Pretty simple, as so. Alright, but there's the fit we got. We got a real nice fit. Let me get one over here. Don't over tighten, they're just plastic. So, and then I guess, I don't know, they only gave, oh yeah, here's the other one. They gave us 4. So you put 2 here. The bottom's exposed, so that's where your cables and everything come in. Then you've got 2 more slots up top. And hook and screw. All we're looking for out front is to compress that gasket. It's got a little gasket around the perimeter, and we just want to make sure that gets crushed and creates a nice seal. And that's it. All right, and then that's our display. Okay, looks nice. We're going to put our switch in. I did do a spare hole, but there's your sizing of the switch. It's a nice tight fit. There is a little rubber gasket around the base of the switch to maintain the integrity of the box. And then we're going to find center. So we're going to go straight up there, come through our hole. And I already showed you this. This is the one that snaps in. As so. And see, it's still loose to the panel, and all we do now is tighten up that little gear thing that I showed you. And that's going to pull all this out and crunch it to the panel. And I'm watching my gasket out here get squished. And after you've got firm contact, you're done, and that thing can't rotate. That little stainless steel strip, there's a little washer there. It's got teeth on it that dig into the back of the panel. You know, I don't know how many times I've turned a switch and the little gland nut comes loose in the back and the whole switch is turning in your hand. But those little teeth on the backside really grab a hold of it. And then your contact block, I'll show this too. It installs pretty easily. It's just a snap in, snap out. That's your contact block there. And remember, we've got our little push buttons here. So we need to figure out where we want to, which position we want. If we put it here, it works one way. If we put it over here, it works the other way. So we just, that just hooks in there, I think. I wouldn't go upside down. There it is. That just snaps in. And now we can, it actually gives you a visual. Right here, you can see when that switch is being actuated. And what's cool about them is you can stack them up. See here in the back, after this one's wired, you got your 2 screws and your wire from top and bottom. You can take another module and just add it to it and double stack that block. So you could have a quad of them, or just keep building on it. And then there's 3 positions. You can put it in the center. If I put it in the center, it'll work. Actually, let's put it in the center. I'll show you what it does. In the center, it turns this into an on-on switch. And if you look, you can see your little green actuator in there. I'm in the center position of the switch now. I'm going to go left. Okay, I'm actuating the switch. I'm going to go to the center again. Switch is off. Now I'm going to go to the right. So same switch. It could be an on-off on. You can configure it any way you want with the modular switch gear. All right, but we'll just leave it there for now. We can move it later if we want. And I can plug my little block in here so I don't lose it. There it is. Yeah, and plug that in so I'm ready to wire there. Okay, door's done. This hole's just getting a plastic plug. If I ever wanted to add another switch, I'll put it in later. All right, let's get to the subplate. Okay, so we've kind of got a little arrangement here of how we want it. I isolated the relays. I just cut a small piece of DIN rail to mount just the relays. Separately, it was just packing in way too tight there. And what we're going to do is, I've got the subplate. Here's a tip for you. Always mark the top. This is a rectangular plate. It would be a shame to get all your stuff mounted and pre-wired just to find out you built it sideways. Don't ask me how I know this. But we've got everything laid out pretty good. Another tip is to put it up on 1-bys. We're going to be drilling and tapping the sub base. This is a nice heavy 10 gauge plate. We're going to be using 632s, and anyone that hasn't ever used a drill tap combination, they're a wonderful thing. It'll drill it, tap it, and knock the burr off of it with this little countersink right here. So pretty wonderful little setup. Put your 1-bys in far enough where you can use a T-square on the side and come in and square up all your parts. There's nothing worse than opening up a panel and seeing a rail that's in there crooked or something. But I like this arrangement. My power supplies are up on top. My driver's over here. These are all the things here that generate heat. They're up and out of the way. And the wiring down here will be, no, I'm not going to say protected, but the heat will just stay up at the top of the can. I'm not planning on ventilating. So I don't know how hot a stepper motor driver runs, these little fellas. But you can mount this 2 different ways. It looks like it's kind of like a heat sink. You can mount them vertically like that, or you can lay them down. I thought I would probably get better heat transfer if I went ahead and laid it down against the plate, let the plate soak up some of the heat. So I'm going to lay that one down. This one does not den rail mount. This one's just getting mounted with a couple of screws. So it's got slots for screws. So let me get this laid out, and then we can drill and tap all our plate. Sweep it off one last time, mount all our den rail, and then start putting components on. Okay, so we got everything marked and drilled, and we are now devoid of chips, metal shavings. We got all my reference marks everywhere where everything goes, and you can even number it. You know, mark the first slot and kind of number it, and there it's number 1, goes there. And the little fellow goes here for number 2, for our 2 little relays. This is the one for the driver. And then finally our big terminal strip. I just pulled the terminals off the end so I get to it to screw it in. Alright, so just a matter of mounting this stuff up. Okay, well, we got everything mounted. You know, people are going to be inclined to put this in the can right away, but resist that urge. This is a subplate. It's easy to get to. Do as much wiring as you can before you insert it in the panel. It'll save you tons of time. So we're going to get started wiring as per the diagram. And but we've got all components mounted, all the holes are cut, all the metal shavings are out of the way. All we got is wire and wire shards that are going to get, you know, all over the place, but they're pretty inert. They're not going to hurt too much. So we're done with all our stuff. I had to go, for my stepper driver, I had to go get some cap head screws. The heads on those Phillips head were too big, and they got a really tight little mounting plate there. But that's the sub base done. We're ready to start wiring. Okay, we are just wrapping it up. I've got a little bit of grounding to do right here. And you got to bring all these greenies together and make a ground connection here. I got my stuff. Here, I'll flip it around and show you guys. Oh. There, you get a better look at it there. You got to whip out the this side to go out to the door. And then I've got a little bit of grounding to do, but all this wiring was done. Actually, you know, you elevate it a little bit, make it kind of like a pallet, and sit down and have a nice day. Actually, I probably got about 3 hours into this thing. So it takes you about 3 hours to get to this point, but everything's wired. We've got a place to connect all our peripherals, which is all the external components. The power supply is coming in, the proximity switch is coming in, the stepper motor is coming in. So we've got a place to connect all that down here. So nothing has to happen up here at all. You know, as far as making connections down in a box or anything like that. So that's why we left so much room down here on the bottom, so we can get wires in and get our fat fingers in there to work on it and all that. We've got 3 breakers, 110 volt. That's the power supply coming in. Got 24 volt and 48 volt with the 2 separate power supplies. So each power supply's got its own breaker. We've got some relays. One's a master arming relay. The other one brings up power to the stepper drive, and R3 is going to be that's an output, and that's to trigger a solenoid for automatic coolant. So at the end of the cycle, the coolant shuts down. All right, so that's as much work as I can do out of the box. It's time to put it in the box and then start thinking about getting it mounted. All right, that's coming up next. Okay, well I got this all buttoned up. I got about 3 hours into wiring everything. I got my grounding done. I didn't feel like going out and buying a ground bar, and so I just used 3 ground screws, and that's just me being lazy. But there it is, completed. All that's left to connect. We got kind of a pigtail out here that's going out to the stuff in the door. Now we need to put a ground strap to the door. And that's probably about it. Okay, so we've got our power switch in. We've got a button plugging up a hole that does absolutely nothing but make people ask questions, so I love it. We'll probably do an e-stop in there later. I don't have one, so we'll probably do a mushroom head e-stop there. So power on and an emergency dump. All right, and our display's in, totally empty, nothing here to look at. We're going to take our sub base and drop it in, which is easier said than done. You know, they don't give you a lot of room for your fingers, and sometimes these things get pretty heavy. But we're gonna slip it in here and move it around till our holes line up. There's 4 little threaded bosses in there, and now we're in. We're done. We're ready to put in our screws. In times like this, you know, a screwdriver is not magnetic, but I'll give you a tip. I'm going to go get a little bit of stuff that I use to go down in panels. It's a pretty simple trick. This is a small amount of mastic, and they use this in the HVAC industry for putting ductwork together. And if you can get a roll of it, grab some, because there's my screw, and it ain't coming out, and we can fish down the panel and get those screws started. And 9 times out of 10, your mastic will come back with it. So that's a good trick for you to get screws going and make your screwdriver as one with your screw. So focus chi grasshopper and get your pookie back every time. Now we did manage to drop a screw down here, and I'm going to use the same method. I'm going to just do a buildup of stick them right there on the end. And we're going to go down. And we're going to attempt to grab that screw. There it is. All right. who needs magnets. So we can finish up doing our holes here. I'm 3 for 3. And we're going for our 4th. Okay, I'm 4 for 4 and got my Pookie back. So we're done with that. I can peel it off our screwdriver and go through and tighten all 4 of our screws. And then our sub base is in. So you're better off working smarter, not harder. Always build your panels with a sub plate. They're super. I mean, don't ever order a panel and don't buy the sub plate. They're only a few dollars, so it makes it infinitely easier. Then I see guys buy cans all the time, and then they try to mount all this stuff just in the back of the can. You know what you end up with? You end up with a bunch of screws hanging out of the back, for one thing, and then you fight it trying to wire the whole thing. And they did all that because they wanted to save $8 on a backing plate. Just get it. That's my advice. Just get it. All right, guys. We got a little bit of wiring to do here. These guys just go right here, so they're ready to go. And then we got to figure out how to mount it. Okay, and there we have the door done to the switch and to the PLC, and we've got our data cable put in, and with a classic time-wasting maneuver around the switch because I don't feel like making a new Cat 5, so that'll get tie wrapped up and just sit there. And we're ready to mount. You know, I think we're gonna. The only peripheral things we have to hook up are the 110 volt power supply, a proximity switch, and the step motor. Those are the only 3 things that need to be brought into it. But we can go figure out how to mount it, and then we'll get those things wired in, and then we're ready for the programmer. All right. Well, I just thought I'd shoot this. I think we've done enough here for one video, but that kind of tells you how to lay out a panel, plan your openings, do your wiring layouts, things like that. Hope it was informative, and thanks for watching, guys. Well, I couldn't end this video without at least powering it up and seeing what it's all about. This is what's considered the home screen. Press 1 for manual control. So you come in on F1 for manual. That takes you to a new screen. We got F1 for jog forward, F2 for jog backwards, set our home position, and set target. And those are to set your parameters for your different grinding jobs. And we're going to go back, and then we're going to press F2, and this is for the auto control. And these are all my grinding patterns. F1 is 2 reciprocates, 1 step over. 2 reciprocates, 1 step over. F2 is reciprocate and step over all at the same time. So if you're really moving across a part in your rough grinding, you use this one. And then F3 is going to be reciprocate, step over, reciprocate, step over, reciprocate, step over. So it's going to be a rough grind, an intermediate grind, and then F1 is going to be your fine finish last one. All right, so let's take it back to home screen and shut her down.